Welcome to Upside Down Mirror, one woman's true story of a twin flame journey, a reflection of true love, true hate, and everything between, where everything and nothing matters at the same time. Paradigms shatter as mirrors of shadows cut through indestructible layers, testing the sands of time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Upside Down Mirror. So, right now, we're at the point where we are creating our heaven on earth. We're working through our intimacy issues. I'm getting a little distraught. I'm not really seeing any hope in the future in reference to Sean and I working together in the capacity that I know I'm meant to work with my husband in. But yet around me, there's still magic happening. So it was beginning to be quite a confusing time for me. The foundation to our beautiful lake house is now starting to be built. We are looking at a very bright future. Not only that, Costa Rica opened up its borders and we're now ready to go on the honeymoon that we've been waiting to go on. So I have to really be grateful for my husband because he agreed to do iboga, which is another natural plant medicine, during our honeymoon. You know, we both know that we have to work on some stuff. So we decided, okay, we're going to do iboga. We're going to do this part of the time and then we're going to go to Nassau, the other part, and we're going to have a magical honeymoon. A few days before we left for the honeymoon, I once again walked into the bathroom and laying right in front of my face was his phone with Facebook Messenger up with the same girl that he had been talking to before that he had said he would tame that down. And once again, I don't go through this man's cell phone, but these things just appear. And so once I look at it and I'm looking at inappropriate messages at this point, and it's not directly toward him, but it's saying things that are inappropriate to say to a married man. And so, of course, I pick up the phone and I start to scroll through the messages. Then what I saw next actually made me explode because I am a big investor. I invest in cryptocurrency and he knows I'm extremely passionate about it. But yet, once again, he doesn't embark on that journey with me. So Sean had said to this girl, because she was taking up investing, like she was beginning to invest, he said to her, I'm going to send you some money to invest. And then she started calling it our money. And that just made me so angry because I told him, I was like, if you should be investing with your wife and then we can call it our money, not with this girl that you actually used to date. And I said, and I thought that you were not talking to her anymore. And then he said, you know, I tried not to talk to her, but then, you know, we just started talking again. At that moment, I absolutely knew that I was worth way more than that. Like that is one of the defining moments where it's like, Rebecca, I don't care if you're building $1 billion house. You will never be happy unless you're truly in love with this man. He's truly in love with you. And whatever's going on gets fixed. So I told him, I was like, I'm out of here. And I went and spent the night at a hotel for a few nights. And during that process, I actually stopped by my sister's house and I was talking to her about it. And once again, he wasn't cheating on me. I do think it was inappropriate. And for the most part, if you're looking at Sean, you're going to be like, he is such a great guy because a lot of people settle and they don't really have the type of connection together where they are working together on all levels. They're used to going to their separate ways. I wanted the type of connection where this guy's my best friend. We can read each other's minds. We just get each other. And so my sister had said something like, well, Rebecca, I don't know if you're going to find the guy that you're talking about. Like, I'm not even sure a guy exists like you're talking about. And I said, you're different than me. I was like, you don't think you can get that guy. I said, I know I can get that guy, and I will not settle until I do. So then after talking to her, I went home, and he was there, and he was like in tears. And he said he'd been throwing up. He was sick to his stomach. He said, I realize, Rebecca, like how much I truly dearly love you, and I'm so sorry. And I told her that we can't talk anymore, and I got my money back. And he's like, I just really want to move on from here. And he said, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I do have some intimacy fears. We talked through that. We made up, we made love, and I felt like, okay, hopefully, we can move forward with this. So we got to Costa Rica, and we got to the Iboga ceremony, and I think that went very, very well. Iboga is the stern father. Ayahuasca is the loving mother. So ayahuasca is like an eternal counselor. She shows you things. She teaches you, for the most part, in loving ways. Iboga is kind of in your face. It's very apocalyptic. So what Iboga does, and it's a natural plant medicine, it basically was showing both of us death, death, death. And the point behind that was live while you're alive, because there is death. But then what Iboga also taught me was with death, there's rebirth. So you're always recycling. Energy never dies. It's always recycled. And then Iboga said something very interesting to me. It said, you don't even know how many times you're being recycled. If you would have died in a car accident yesterday, you could be back where you are today in a slightly different reality. And that's why a lot of times deja vu happens. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. So that Iboga journey really impacted both of us and made us realize that life is worth living, and you've got to live in joy. And the worst thing you can do is to live in fear and trap yourself in your own mind. So that ceremony was transformative in so many different levels for us. And I remember him saying to me, when I was in my Iboga journey, I just kept thinking, Rebecca, how much I love you, and I love Willow, and I love our family, and how I want us to bring our heaven to earth like we had talked about. So we left that Iboga journey and flew to Nosara, which is in Costa Rica. And we loved Nosara. It had beautiful beaches. It was very quaint. And we fell in love with it like immediately. So then I told him, I was like, let's just look for land here. Let's go and look at Nosara Estates and, see what we can come up with, because that was part of the sex magic is, manifesting this land in Costa Rica. So we did it. And I literally had $5,000 in Costa Rica at the time. That's a little over 5,000 is what we bought with us. So this very nice gentleman, his job was to kind of wine and dine us and show us the land. And I remember telling him our budget. And with our budget, what I had in mind, we had gotten to this land where you couldn't even see the ocean. And I said, where's the ocean? And he was pointing through these trees. And I was like, well, no, we need land where we can see the ocean. And we rode by this lot. It was lot 16. And I was like, that's it. And he's like, yeah, that's out of your budget. And I was like, no, I want to see it. And it was absolutely perfect. It was mountain view. You could see the ocean. There was like a little cliff where the infinity pool would go. So I was like, this is what we want to get. And I told him the financial stuff at that point, because we were just building this house. And I said, I can put this much down right now. And then once we get home, I can put this much down in 2 weeks. And then we can put the rest down within the next year. And he looked at me and he's like, I'm not so sure she's going to go for that, the owner of the land. And I said, well, this is what I want to manifest. And he was telling us, he's like, you guys are very different than the people I usually show property to. And then the next day he comes and his eyes are wide open and he says, Rebecca, you are not going to believe this. He's like, I didn't even have to tell her what you said. All I said is they want to come up with a financial plan. And she said verbatim what you said to me. He's like, it made the hair stand up on my arm. So then it was done. We were getting that land. We went back up to look at it out of excitement, and on the land, only our land, was white horses. And then I was just like, oh gosh, we are such in divine timing right now. We are so protected. We are in such a magical place in our lives right now. And so we went home and we were contracted with land in Costa Rica, building our dream house on the lake, which we had manifested all of that through sex magic. And remember, this whole entire time, Sean and I are working on ourselves. It doesn't mean it's going to go perfect, because that's what you tend to think. But we were going forward. We were working on ourselves. We were trying to figure out, how to get into that space of ultimate joy of opening the divine feminine and masculine portals to do the healings that we wanted to do. So we get back, we're super excited, and we go on with life. During this time, COVID had set in a little bit more. People started buying up properties all around the lakes, boats. Like, I remember we had to drive to Massachusetts to get our boat because I couldn't find one Yamaha boat that year because people were buying them all up. Not only that, the building supplies went up 3 times. So I ended up having to give extra money to the contractor. It was hard to find employees because employees were quitting because they were getting COVID benefits. And then the people that were building the houses were basically desperate for employees. So there was a lot of stuff that we were facing at this time. But what I noticed was, as the contractor would come up to me and say, I need an extra amount of money beyond budget because, this just went up, that the universe would give me that money. And then the universe gave me enough money to also pay off the Costa Rica land because I had so much faith in our manifestation. I know that when you put yourself out there, and I know that you go into your heart space and you manifest like this, the universe will invest in you if you invest in yourself. And that's what we were seeing all around us. And even Sean said, wow, Rebecca, it's like magic is happening all around us. So about a couple months later, we were contracted to do another ceremony, with some, some people were from Awake and others were clients that were coming in. And I said to Sean, okay, you can come in this ceremony. And he's a musician. He loves music. And I was like, you can DJ. And he agreed to. And I was hoping, we just got done the Iboga trip. I was hoping that we could really do this. I was hoping that, he could finally see how important this was and how beneficial it was to me and to everybody around us. And Willow was with us. So we went to the ceremony. And once again, we were at a place where they did weddings and receptions normally. So we had this huge outside area where we were able to do ceremony and play music for everybody. And then I told him, I was like, the way it works is when we activate, our Merkabas, our light bodies activate. It is the activation of our light bodies that heal everybody around us, because our light bodies are then conduits for that God creator source energy. And it's the God creator source energy that actually heals the people. It's not us. So I was trying to explain that to him. That's why it's so important to me that our family's where it needs to be, because if our family is there to do the healing, the energy around our family has to be the conduit for healing. So, he's sitting there and he's playing the music, and a few things happened. I said to him at one point, I was like, I really, really need you to play Let It Go by Frozen. And at that point, he was playing Kundalini music, because I was looking at a girl who was struggling and I saw that she was crying. And I said, you have to trust me. And for some reason, I knew that he wasn't going to do what I said. So I said, please trust me. And I walked over. He was looking at his phone. He glanced up at me and looked back down. And then he didn't play it. And I just felt like my head explode. And I took a deep breath and I walked over. I was like, play that song, please. And then he mumbled something and he looks it up and he plays it. All of a sudden, when he turns it on, Willow goes out in the middle and just opens her arms and starts singing Let It Go. The girl that I was working with started crying and releasing, and she was letting go of what she needed to in her DNA. And he saw the whole place around him transform because of that song. And then I walked up to him afterwards. I was like, why didn't you play it? And he's like, I didn't know that all that was going to happen. I was like, why don't you trust me at this point? And then he said, you didn't give the Kundalini music a chance. And I was like, no, it's been playing for an hour. And I got a premonition. I knew through my channeling that that song had to be played. I was like, why don't you trust me? Why can't you see what I'm doing? And then he kind of just rolls his eyes. So then I took his phone and I threw it as far as I could into the field. And I said, that's what I think of your phone. And then he knew at that point that I was pretty upset. So he's like, okay, Rebecca, he's like, I'm going to take part in this. And for a little bit, like, he actually was dancing with me and having fun. And during that time, I felt the energy shift all around us. And my daughter started playing with these people that we were there to work with. And she's like, she could play with these people, 6 people at a time, and just heal all of them at once. She was actually bringing out their kid parts and healing them. Like, she would go up, like this one girl she went up to, she said, you and I have to go trick-or-treating. And later I found out that her family never let her go trick-or-treating as a kid because they didn't believe in it. But Willow would know these things, and she would go up and do this to people around us when him and I were connected. When him and I weren't connected, she wasn't doing that as much. So I showed him this. I'm like, see, this is what I'm talking about. When we open these divine feminine and masculine portals, like, miracles happen. So, he got it a little bit more during that ceremony, but still he kind of retreated, and he even left early, and he's like, I'm going to let you work with people. I'm going to get out of your way, is what he said. He goes, I need to be out of your way while you work with people. And I said, no, that's not what I want. I want you to work with me. Whether it be you do the music, I just want you to be a part of what we're doing. So I felt like that ceremony was going to be the catalyst for some major things that were about ready to happen in our relationship. It was also during this ceremony that I first learned how to open up portals. This would change my life forever. A portal is basically an opening or a vortex from where you are now to where you want to be. It's all about intention and focus. So when you open up a portal, it's very important to be in the field of your heart and to have pure intentions. I do teach this in my academy as well, but it's something that you definitely have to be clear and grounded when you do. It all started when myself and a group of the 4 other females were dancing, and I was taking some stagnant energy and putting it in my hand, and then using my all-seeing hand to open up an opening to that God creator source energy. And my intention is to open a portal to true love. And when I was doing this, my arms started acting as pendulums. The girls around me, they were doing the same things with their arms and their legs, moving them with the energy to basically help consciousness expand. You could feel the energy around us open the air. I'll say it's the air, and there's all of this expansion happening. And then all of a sudden, this is the bizarre part. I wasn't even sure if I was going to put this in the podcast, but I am being completely authentic. All of a sudden, I hear this thought in my head, okay, you have to have your clothes off. You need to be doing this in the nude. And that would never happen. So I just pushed it out of my head. And then one of the other girls that I was dancing with said, we're supposed to take our clothes off. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know. I just got that message as well. And we kind of just looked at each other because we knew we weren't going to do it. Well, about 15 minutes later, remember, we had a group of about 5 girls. One of the other girls goes into like a trance-like state and starts to take her clothes off. She completely gets naked. You could tell that she was in a trance. It wasn't a bad trance. She was doing what she had to do to open up the portal as needed. I came to find out later. And then all of a sudden she starts speaking like light language or soul language, but it was a different kind of language. I had never heard it before. But when she was speaking it, I could feel my DNA start to shiver, start to calibrate, shiver, start to quantumly shake. I'm using the best words that I can. And then I looked at her and I said, this is Enochian. She's doing Enochian for the DNA. And she shook her head, yes, rapidly. because she couldn't speak English. She was just speaking this language, and she was kind of in a translated state. And then she was dancing, and I could feel the energy around us really, really, really expand. And then I'm getting all these messages from my guides. And one of the messages that I got was, are you being judgmental? And I said, no, I'm not being judgmental. And the guide said, well, you are being judgmental because you're not going over and dancing with her. So then I let this message resonate for about 30 minutes. And then I walked over to one of the other girls I was dancing with, and I was like, we need to go dance with her. And I explained to her that I felt like we were holding judgment because she was dancing naked. And then I said, I heard my guide say, humans were put on this earth nude. Having your clothes on is fear of exposure. And now you're too scared to go dance with her, and you're expecting to open a portal to true love in heaven. And I knew my guides were right. So myself and the other girls went and danced with her. But the coolest thing happened when we went to dance with her. She turned around and she started doing these movements. If you've ever seen the OA, it kind of reminded me of that. And we were mimicking her movements. These were movements that needed to be done to help to finish opening this portal to true love. So once this was done, the energy in the room was literally spinning to the point that when someone would walk in, they would say, why is the room spinning? And there was even some people purging. And what they were purging is they were purging the energy between heaven and the 3D world. So whatever you were holding in your DNA needed to be purged. So there was a lot of throwing up going on that night. That lasted for probably 5 or 6 hours before she came out of the trance. And that's how the Enochian language was actually introduced. And that's how I really learned how to open the portal. And I knew that the portal, it was very, very important, once again, that the portal was open with pure intent. And this was a portal to true love. There was a woman that was dancing in that portal that met her twin flame a day after we opened that, and she is still with him. So that portal was aiding everyone who was a part of it in their twin flame journey. So we get back home and, we're focused on the lake house that's being built. We have Willow that we're taking to school. We have our everyday lives. I'm still creating. He's doing his music. So everything was busy. We had gotten the boat. We were always out on the lake. Things were going pretty smoothly. I was, for the most part, happy, but still had that burden on me about what I was going to do. I loved my husband so much, but I knew things had to shift. But during that time, one of the contractors quit that was building the house. And there was 5 contractors building the house, but when this guy quit, you would think he was Superman because everything just went on pause. I remember going there day after day after day, and I'm like, what got done today? And it just seemed like nothing was getting done. So I had already learned how to open up portals, and I use that. I teach that in Awake as well. Like, I learned how to open up portals at previous ceremonies. You definitely want to be in that God, Creator, Source energy, and then you have intent, and then you open the portals. So I said to Willow, and then I said to Ariel, my other daughter, I was like, we are opening up a portal for this house to get done. And then all of a sudden, we're in the backyard, and we have music, and it was to Purple Rain. Okay, this is what we opened the portal to, is Purple Rain. And we're opening up a portal, and I'm like, this house is going to get done, this house is going to get done, this house is going to get done. But remember, that's not my conscious mind, but in my subconscious mind, I knew I had that issue with Sean as well, but I wasn't thinking about it consciously, but it was in my energy field. And then I connected the portal to the heavens, and I even saw like the eagles and things around the portal. And then Willow said, Mom, you have to do this. And she started doing some movements and things with her hands. And then I just we let it go. We forgot about it. And that was on a Sunday. So then on Tuesday, I received this call from this gentleman that's interested in doing my academy. And his name's Ryan. And he said, I'm a contractor. I'm from Missouri, and I just got done, my job at the union. So in between jobs, I'm really interested in going into this work. And he's like, but I don't have that kind of money for the tuition, and at first I was just like, oh, okay, like if things change, because I even offered him scholarship, but he's like, no, I just don't have that right now with me being between jobs. I have to save my money. And he's like, I was like, if things change, call me back. So I hung up the phone and my guides were like, you need to barter with him. He's going to help you with your house. This is so unordinary for me to do because I don't know the guy, you know what I mean? At all. And I text him, would you be interested in bartering? I have this house that I'm building in Maryland and one of the contractors quit and we really need help. And he says, yes, I would be. And so then we talk on the phone and he's telling me, he has to take about a week to 10 days getting things wrapped up, but then he can hop in his car, come up and be there. We had initially said 4 weeks, but he said, I can be there longer. He's like, I'm open. And then I hung up the phone and then his wife called me and she also wanted to come. And I was like, at first I remember just kind of getting this feeling like I just knew it. That's where I have to go through my intuition. I just knew that she wasn't supposed to come, or I guess she was, but I just got a bad feeling around it. But I said, yeah, I was like, that's fine. You can come as well. I hung up the phone and then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I just opened that portal. Willow Arrow and I just opened that portal Sunday and it's Tuesday and now he's coming. Sean was all in agreement to it. And, he was like, if you trust this guy, then I'm fine. Let's get this house done. I was super excited and completely grateful for the power of that portal for bringing him in and being able to, help us with our house. So then at the beginning of July, he ends up coming. I am in the house when they pull up. They get out of their car, they come around, and I look at both of them, and I remember with Ryan, I felt this very pure energy, but with her, I just immediately and I don't say this about many people, but I just didn't really like her. I just felt like this really dark energy. And, I didn't say anything. I invited them in and I told him everything that needed to be done. And then he said, yeah, he's like, this is great. He's like, I can work with the main contractor and, I'll start on Monday. Ryan was a very hard worker. He knew what he was doing. Having conversation with him, he was spiritual. He was in the moment. He was very interested in bringing conscious creation into his life, which is why he was taking Awake. And everything was going smoothly, but then, stuff started to reveal itself with him. It turns out that, him and his wife had been separated for quite some time, and she had been addicted to drugs, so they were on and off. And he had just decided to give her another chance. He said, I didn't expect for you to let her come. He's like, but she's here with me. I guess we're going to try to give it another chance. But then whenever he was working, she did find a way to find drugs and do some things that she shouldn't have done. So it all kind of exploded. He got really upset. He ended up putting her on a plane and sending her home. And then a lot of stuff came to the surface for Ryan that he was about ready to work through. So I said, hey, why don't you come and do an ayahuasca ceremony with me? I think it's really, really going to help you. And he said, I would absolutely love to do that. So one of the students from Awake, her husband, myself, and Ryan all met in this little cabin where I live to do an ayahuasca ceremony with Ryan. So it was 4 of us, and Ryan's intentions were to clear his energy, shift his shadow energies, to heal his shadow energies, and he also was very interested in finding out more about his own twin flame journey and to purge the relationship between him and his soon-to-be ex. Something really funny happened at the beginning of the ceremony. We were preparing for ceremony. We were doing the sacred rituals around it, setting our intentions, and all of a sudden we heard this screaming outside of the window. And we run to the window and we look, and there's this guy who is completely naked running down the road as though he doesn't really know what he's doing. He kind of looks like he's in a trance too. And then his family's behind him, following him in a minivan, screaming at him to get back in the car. So apparently he was naked, runs out of his cabin and just starts running down the road. And it took me a while to get over the whole shock of it all and realize that that is what needed to happen in the last ceremony to begin to open up those portals to manifestation of true love. So I couldn't help but to think that that was very synchronistic. Ryan had a transformative journey with his first experience on natural plant medicine. And it was at that moment that he decided that this was also going to be a very profound and big journey with him. And he would be also using this as part of his purpose in life for himself, and he said for others eventually as well. So he expressed interest in attending as many awake natural plant medicine ceremonies that he could so that he could heal himself and begin to learn to heal others as well with the natural plant medicine. And I said, okay, we're having one in Colorado and I would love to invite you. So he said, okay. So we planned the Colorado trip, and in between then, he worked very hard. I remember seeing him work so hard, I felt kind of guilty about it because I was like, should I bring him food? It just seemed like wasn't taking a lunch break or anything. And I knew, that he was going through a lot emotionally and personally at the time as well. It seemed like Willow took a liking to him right away. She was doing her magic on him basically as soon as they met. Ryan was showing Willow and myself very unusual pictures of him, pictures that he took with a regular iPhone where he would be around 7 to 8 feet tall, missing some limbs, or else the limbs were spread out through his body. It looked like he was definitely shape-shifting in these pictures. And there were a lot of other pictures where every single time he took a picture, there would be this spaceship-looking Merkaba up around his crown and his third eye. And it was in a lot of his pictures, so he had a lot of paranormal things going on around him. I remember thinking he is definitely a starseed. During this time, right before the Colorado trip, Sean and I were actually getting along very well. I remember feeling like, okay, I'm in love with him and I think things might just work out. I had kind of put all that stuff behind us, and I was thinking, that I'm happy. I have this house and we have the place in Costa Rica, and we're both doing our creative projects. Everything's going smooth. He wasn't like engrossed in my life like I wanted him to be, but I was, for the most part, actually really happy. So we were planning the September trip to Colorado. We all flew in a plane, and that was once again another magical ceremony. It was basically the same thing. Sean played music, but he was still very much on the outskirts of the ceremony. I would have these amazing magical things happen, and he would be like in the bedroom and not really paying attention, but he would pay attention to Willow. But I remember just kind of accepting it. I remember thinking, okay, that's fine. This is just the way it's going to be, and I'm going to be happy about it because at least he's here with me. I'm here with Awake. Everything is going well. In that particular ceremony, there was just, once again, magic and miracles were happening. People were healing. And I just remember feeling like, okay, I'm with my soul tribe. So at the end of the second night, it was a long night and I was about ready to go to bed. And I remember thinking, I cannot wait to get into the arms of my husband. I actually remember thinking that. And then two of the students came up from Awake and they're like, we really need you downstairs. I said to them, jokingly, I said, really? I was like, I'm getting ready to crawl in bed in the arms of my husband. And they looked at him and they said, he's asleep. He's not going to know. You can come down for a little while. So I was like, okay. So I went back down the stairs and kind of looking around to see, what exactly they needed. And there sitting were a few students and then Ryan. And one of the students said, hey, I need to give you and Ryan this activation I've been told to. So I sit down and I'm looking at Ryan and he's looking at me and she's like, okay, let's do this. And all of a sudden she gave us this activation and I felt this surge through my third eye and then my eyes started rolling in the back of my head. And I was like, whoa, what is that? And she's like, I gave you his star and I gave him your star because you guys, have to remember some things. And I was like, okay. And then she looks at us and she goes, cuddle for a moment. And I remember thinking, that's awkward. And he just looked at me, the same thing, awkward. And so I lay down, he lays down behind me and he just kind of pats me, puts his arm around me, and we literally just cuddled for a moment. And then I got up, talked to another student, and walked back up the stairs and didn't really think too much of it. The next morning, we were cleaning up the Airbnb, getting ready to leave. Everybody gets on the flights. We get home. Everybody's safe. Life is going back to normal. And then about 2 days later, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I miss Ryan. It's like I'm thinking about him in a way I've never thought about him before. And I'm like, why am I thinking about Ryan like this? I didn't feel this when I first saw him. And then I texted the girl who had given us the activation, and I said, what was that activation? And, why did I have to cuddle with Ryan? And then she said, back in the text, I told you I had to have you guys remember that you needed the star activation from him. And then she sent me a screenshot of a text that he sent her an hour before that said the exact same thing as me. He asked her, why did I have to cuddle with Rebecca, and what was that activation about? He said, I can't stop thinking about her. So we both felt it at the exact same time. Immediately, I thought about two things. I thought about that vision that my guardian parents had given me with the guy with the work boots on from the waist down. And then I thought about myself looking up at the stars, angry at Sean saying, I'm going to have a guy come from the stars. And then, of course, there's the portal that I opened up as well. In that moment, I got a little bit panicked in reference to my own manifestation. I will continue to tell you everything that happened in episode 17 of Upside Down Mirror.